Carlisle Hashim, and this is Carlisle's Chesapeake. And today we are in Troika Gallery. Troika Gallery is celebrating its 20th anniversary here in Easton, Maryland. We have several paintings to show you this morning. William Stork's Magnolia, my grandfather's favorite tree, which is in bloom now, the magnolia and evergreen. Beautiful tree and indigenous to this area. We have another painting by William Stork, who is from New Hampshire. No, I'm sorry, he's from Annapolis, but he lives in New Hampshire. And Carolee Thompson's paintings, she is a Baltimorean, yay, Baltimore. And she is associated with or has been associated with the Schuller Gallery. I'd like to introduce Alan. Alan Girard is the regional manager for the Chesapeake Bay Foundation, which is headquartered in Annapolis, but has a regional office here in Easton. Welcome, Alan.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you. Yesterday, the president came out with a budget, and I'd like you to talk to us about that budget and how it affects our environment here on the Chesapeake Bay.
Well, the president's budget actually zeroes out the Chesapeake Bay program. This is a program that was initiated in the 80s under the Reagan administration during a similar time of interest in fiscal conservatism and trying to keep money in taxpayers' pockets. President Reagan actually said, you know, we need to step up funding for investment in bringing the Bay back to health. I have our report card here. We estimated back in 1983 that the Bay on a scale of 0 to 100 was at about a 23. It's at a 34 now.
Okay, Alan, tell us what your report card means in terms of different grades.
Well, the scale is from 0 to 100. The report card actually measures 13 indicators of Bay health. Everything from fish populations to forests and pollution like nitrogen and phosphorus that's responsible for the low oxygen dead zones that cause fish kills in the Bay. All of those figures are averaged to get us to the 34 where we are today. We are seeing improvement since Reagan's time, and that's an indication that the investment in Bay restoration is working. You know, President Reagan called the Chesapeake Bay a national treasure.
It is.
And it really is.
And that's why we have this art here, because people are so inspired by it.
I think people that you know, spend time out on the water on the weekends, take their kids fishing, we've actually been seeing clearer water. And I think your viewers have recognized it this past fall and winter. We've been seeing some very clear water, which is signs that pollution is staying on the landscape and being well managed. And that's a good thing. Now is not the time to hold back investment in the Bay restoration effort. We need to continue that investment and continue the progress we've been seeing.
Well, you said an interesting couple words here that I hadn't really heard before, but water staying on the landscape, which is key here when we're talking about not having water run off into the Bay, because the Bay already has enough water in it, doesn't it?
Yeah. Well, it's not only water, it's polluted water. You know, there's really three main sources of pollution to the Bay: agricultural land, polluted runoff from roads and rooftops and parking lots, and then also wastewater. Farmers have actually been doing a very good job at managing pollution. We've been seeing more cover crops in winter. We've been seeing better nutrient management associated with farm production, and so pollution from that sector is going in the right direction. As is pollution from wastewater, these centralized plants that when we flush our toilets or take a shower, that water goes to these plants, and there's technology now to really clean up the water before it's discharged to a local waterway. So we're seeing that go in the right direction. This is all as in response to the federal government essentially saying, look, we need science to let us know what the target is for a healthy Bay, and leave it to the states and local governments and businesses to work together to achieve the goal of a healthy Bay. And that's essentially what the Chesapeake Bay program does. That's the program that the president's budget zeroes out. We're talking about $73 million to zero. It's really the glue that is holding the Bay restoration effort together and keeping us moving in the right direction.
Well, you know, Alan, I've grown up with knowing about the EPA. It's like a part of our lives. We just take it for granted that the EPA is part of our lives. And I distinctly remember when I was about 22 or 3, the fallout from 3 Mile Island. Like, that was my first awakening to, oh, the environment and what could happen. And since then, I have heard that there's actually even a Facebook page of people who have contracted brain tumors and other cancers from 3 Mile Island disaster. Mm-hmm. So while this seems grim, it is reality. And that is pollution at its worst, I guess.
Well, you know, when we talk about the bay, certainly toxic pollution is a problem, but the main sources of the nitrogen and phosphorus and sediment, when we have too much of that in the bay, those are the things that essentially suck oxygen out of the water to a point where there's not enough for fish and crabs and oysters to breathe. You know, we have these fish kills that are a result of this pollution coming off the land. And the good news is that there's been progress managing agriculture, managing wastewater and stormwater in ways that make sure that the nitrogen and phosphorus and sediment that arrives at the bay is minimized to a level that the bay can withstand. You know, the bay is an incredibly resilient system. And we've seen that as we've kept good management of those pollutant sources in place, that the bay is recovering. We're seeing underwater grasses at record levels. We're seeing female crab populations increase. We're seeing,
and that's money.
Well, it's money for the seafood industry. Right. It's money for the tourism industry.
And everybody's happy.
There's even data out there that shows that there's a good connection between property values and the health of the water. So, not only is it, good for quality of life of people here on the Eastern Shore, it's good for people's pocketbooks. These are jobs that are at stake here. And if we pull back out on that investment, we're really going to be going in the wrong direction.
I had the opportunity on Monday to go down to Horn Point, which is as you know, it's the University of Maryland Center for Environmental Sciences lab, think tank about the bay. And so one of the questions that the little kids asked was, well, why are the grasses so close to the water? What's the seaweed all about? Like, why is it floating so close to the surface? And then the answer was, well, it needs oxygen. And to get oxygen, you need to be close.
Well, it's common sense, really. We've seen underwater grass numbers go to record numbers in all of the last 4 years. We're at a 30-year high for underwater grasses. Your viewers who may go out in the Poplar Island area near Tillman, there are massive grass beds out there now. And it's a factor of the grasses having enough sunlight in order to grow. Years ago, you would walk a foot into the water and you couldn't see your toes anymore. Now we're seeing levels of water clarity 5 feet, 10 feet in some areas.
Aww.
And the grasses need sunlight to survive, so when there is less sediment in the water, less algae that is fueled by nitrogen and phosphorus, then the grasses have a chance to recover. And recovery is just what we're seing with that.
And who lives in those grasses?
The crabs are, I hear this story so often. People talk about when they grew up in this area. I'm a come here. I've been here for about 20 years. But 30 and 40 years ago, even, people say, growing up, they would go out on a Saturday morning and just wade along the shoreline with their dip net and just catch some soft crabs for breakfast. And,
can you imagine having a soft shell crab for breakfast? Yum!
We're just starting to get back to that time of being able to see those grasses on the shoreline, and that is the habitat for the crabs, for the fish, and that is showing that the system is recovering.
Yeah, how exciting. We could have all these tourists come down and we could serve them soft shell crabs for breakfast.
Make a few dollars while we're at it, I guess.
That'd be exciting. Let's talk about the cooperation between the state and the communities, and if there's lack of funding from the federal government, how does that handout.
Well, so what President Trump has done is he's proposed to Congress that the $73 million that goes to EPA's Chesapeake Bay program, this is really the glue that is holding the state and local and business community together to make progress on the Bay that we've been seeing. He's proposing to cut that from 73 million to zero. Now, this doesn't mean the decision is made. What it means is that this is a proposal to Congress. Congress has the final say on what gets appropriated and what doesn't. So, you know, these are real dollars that go to projects on the ground that slow and filter runoff. We actually are fortunate to be working in a couple communities now, Talbot County and also Cambridge, where we are working with private homeowners to put in things like rain gardens and rain barrels. These are sort of gardening and landscaping features that can collect runoff that comes off your driveway or your roof and filter it through the plants there rather than allowing it to escape to the street and then make its way straight to the nearest river or stream in the bay. That's one of the few sources of pollution that is increasing. So our organization is working hard to partner with groups like EPA to leverage resources at their disposal to provide homeowners and businesses with the tools that they need to slow runoff and continue the progress that we've been seeing on bay restoration. And
can I go so far as to say this, that if we are learning these steps, then we can be teaching the rest of our country about these steps, that in effect our Chesapeake Bay is like a laboratory unto itself. It's the biggest estuary in the country. We're right next to DC, so DC doesn't have to go far to see what's happening. They can just, you know, get in their cars and in 35 minutes max, you're at some kind of a waterway and see how these experiments, if you will, that are leading to improvements in life happen.
Yeah. You know, in the 70s, under the Nixon administration, the Congress at that time near unanimously supported adopting the Clean Water Act. And that is really the foundation for bringing back all of this nation's waterways back to health, including the Chesapeake. It's very simple. The Clean Water Act says for the nation waters, we need to understand what the number is for healthy water, and then work with the states and communities to implement plans and projects to achieve that target for nitrogen, phosphorus, and sediment. Here are the main pollutants in the bay. Really, you know, within an hour of the nation's capital, if we can't do it here in the largest estuary in the world, we're not going to be able to do it anywhere. And what's happening is we are doing it here. We are making progress, and this is a model for how to get it done around the country. You know, it's been several decades since the Clean Water Act was adopted, but sometimes it takes time and effort to build the political will and the community interest to make the progress. And it's so encouraging now to be seeing the clear water and to be able to go out on the water with your child. I have 3 children, and we were just out over the weekend. And the water clarity, even during all the rain that we've been having, has been spectacular to see. And it's heartening to know that when we come together as a community of businesses and citizens and government working together, we can make the progress that we've been seeing. So now is the time to, you know, really call your congressman and let them know that the president's budget does not reflect the values of our community, and the progress that we've been seeing needs to be maintained. Congressman Harris represents the 1st District on the Eastern Shore. He has supported fully funding the Chesapeake Bay program. It's important that that support continues.
Senator Sarbanes and Mikulski were lead people in supporting the Bay, and they've handed down a tremendous tradition that needs to be continued.
Yep, Senator Cardin has been an extraordinary leader now in the Senate now in ensuring the Bay Restoration Program continues. Many of the congressmen and senators throughout the Bay watershed, this includes Pennsylvania and Virginia and West Virginia, other states.
New York. That's Susquehanna going up there.
You know, what's happening is this is all getting bundled into a national conversation where senators and congressmen in Michigan that are concerned with similar issues in the Great Lakes are equally alarmed with the president's budget. You know, there are lots of priorities for the nation when we talk about a nation's budget. And so while Congressman Harris has been strong so far, we can expect lots of pushing and pulling over Congress in the next couple months, and it is absolutely critical that people demonstrate their support, particularly to Congressman Harris and also the White House now, that we need to see funding for the Bay restoration continue.
Well, the Eastern Shore is a beautiful place. It's God's country, and we welcome our president to come down and join us here on the Eastern Shore because it's quite beautiful. Thank you very much, Alan.
I appreciate the time.